When I went to college during my senior year, I lived in a house with one roommate. The house was a little way off campus, and my roommate's name was Alicia. Few months into the school year, Alicia went back home one weekend. That meant that I would be living in the house by myself. The house was not that big, and I didn't think too much of it. But the very first night, something happened. I was by myself in my bedroom, and it was probably 11 o'clock at night. I was just watching a movie or something, and all of a sudden, I heard a loud banging on the front door. It wasn't even like somebody knocking, it was like they were banging on the door as hard as they possibly could. I was immediately startled by this. I got up and left my bedroom to go and see who was there. The banging went on for about 15 seconds straight. When I was walking down the hallway that led to the living room at the front of the house, it stopped. I arrived at the door and looked out the window. When I did, I saw two men at once. One of them was running to the left and the other one was running to the right. I only saw them for a second before they went out of my view. It was so fast that I had no clue what they were doing. But I did know that they were running through my yard and heading to the other side of the house or the back. I moved away to go to the back of the house where the kitchen and the dining room were. I walked back into the dining room and pulled back the curtains of the main window to look out. When I did, almost right away, I saw a guy there. He swung what appears to be a baseball bat right at the window. Thankfully, it did not break on the first hit, but it was very loud. I instantly ran away from the window and into my bedroom. When I got there, I grabbed my phone and I called 911. I also locked my bedroom door. As I was doing these things, I heard several more bangs from the window and eventually the glass breaking. I was terrified. I just hoped they wouldn't try to enter my room, whoever they were. I heard the two men enter the house and walk into the living room area. I was on the line with 911, begging for someone to get there faster. The footsteps of the men inside went around the living room for maybe a minute or two. Then it sounded like they went back towards the rear of the house. Then I stopped hearing them at all. It was like they just left. Things were silent for a while after that. I couldn't believe it. I would say maybe 3 or 4 minutes later, the police arrived. I carefully left my room and let them in through the front door. They searched the house and the entire property, but the men were gone. The window was smashed and the house was slightly messed up, but nothing appeared to be stolen. It was all really strange. The police eventually left and I had to get a new window. I still wonder what those guys were doing. I think they broke into the wrong house or something, considering the way they just broke in and then left so fast. A few years ago, when I was in college, I did quite a bit of studying. I took school very seriously and needed to spend extra time on certain subjects. Sometimes I would go to study in the halls and work on assignments late into the night. I could just focus better there, and I think a lot of students had similar feelings. I would often see people working on things late. I went to a pretty large university, and the campus was big. There was a lot of different buildings. One Friday night, I went to one of the study halls where I had classes to get some work done. With it being the weekend, there were not so many people around campus at night. When I was in the building, I didn't see anybody else at all. I found an empty classroom, went inside, sat down on a table, took out my laptop and notes, and began working. This went on for several hours. I would often lose track of time when I was working hard. At one point, I heard a door being opened and shut in the distance. When I heard it, I just figured someone else was in the building, and I didn't give it much thought. But as I kept working, I soon heard footsteps approaching my classroom. I could see the front door of the classroom with a small window in it. I looked over and soon saw somebody through the window. It was a guy who I didn't recognize. He looked in and then moved away out of sight. I figured that he was looking for a classroom that was empty to study or work in. I went back to what I was doing, probably a minute or later. I suddenly heard the classroom door open up. I looked up and saw the same guy was back. I watched him enter the room, then looked back at my laptop. I was kind of annoyed that this guy was coming in here. Most of the classrooms in the buildings were about the same. He could have gone to any other one, but he chose the one that I was in. I was focusing on my work for the next minute or so. Then I realized that I never heard the guy sit down. I glanced back at him and saw that he was still standing there. He was kind of looking ahead, not directly at me. Then he glanced over at me, but I couldn't tell what he was doing. He was creeping me out because he was just standing there. He didn't say anything at all either. I decided that I would just leave. I grabbed my things and got up. The guy was still standing there. I asked him if he was okay, but he didn't answer me. I walked over closer to him and once more asked him if everything was alright. He finally moved back away from me and gave me a kind of dirty look, but still didn't say anything. Then I just left the classroom. I didn't know what to make of this weird behavior. Not long after leaving the classroom, I was walking down the hallway. That's when I heard the door opening to the classroom that I had just been in. I saw the guy leaving and starting to walk in my direction. I was really creeped out, so I walked faster. He followed me all the way to the entrance of the building. Then I left, and when I was out of the building, I sprinted to my car. I saw the guy leave the building and I drove away. Luckily, I didn't see him get into a car. After that time, I didn't study in that building late at night again.